Constructing the built environment, due 17th of July 2020. So this week's work is a subject review. It's not an assessment, but it's a really good opportunity for you to reflect back on work that we've done both in and out of school, because we have covered quite a bit this year, and it's always a good idea to go back and see what we've actually accomplished. Okay, so task one will take you roughly 10 minutes, and it's all about legislation. So this is something that we would have covered at the very beginning of the school year of Year 9. So it is really important to recognise what a legislation is and what they cover, as these can help protect you when you are working in a dangerous area or a practical environment. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to complete the word search on the following slide. Okay, so here it is. You can see you've got a grid that's filled with letters, and the letters all join up either horizontally or vertically to create full words. And on the right hand side there are 4 statements all about legislations, and they've got some missing words in them. So number 1 is the following legislations was created in 2002. Control of blank blank to health. So there are 2 blank words, and they're somewhere in that grid. Now they won't be next to each other, they'll be scattered. One might be in the top left corner, one might be right in the middle. But you've got to find those 2 missing words that relate to that legislation. Number 2, this report should be used when an accident or incident has happened on site. So the legislation is reporting of injuries, blank, and blank blank regulation. So you've got 3 words missing from that legislation title there, and again they're hidden somewhere in the grid, not together, they are separate. Statement 3. When working at a high-rise building, so a building that has more than 2 or 3 floors, which legislation should be followed to ensure working conditions are safe? Working at blank regulations. So just 1 word is missing from that legislation title. And 4, it is every employer's responsibility to ensure that all employees have the correct workwear when working in a practical environment. Now this is something that we bang on about a lot in the workshop especially. So the legislation you're looking for is blank 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 at blank regulations. So there's 4 missing terms there, and they pretty much make the entire legislation title. But if you just think back to all of the times you've been working in the workshop and all the times we've nagged you to make sure you're safe by wearing certain things, I'm sure that will help you. So this word search might take you 10 minutes, it might take you a little bit longer, and that's absolutely fine. Task 2, this will take you roughly 20 minutes. So identifying hazards. This is something again that we would have done near the beginning of the school year, but also it's something that you would have done continuously whilst doing practicals. So you must be aware of your surroundings when working in a practical environment. To help identify potential hazards, site walks are completed by site inspectors and supervisors. Look at the images on the next slide and complete the table below by identifying the hazards in each image, so there will be more than one possibly, what the risk of that hazard is, so what harm could it cause, and what control can be put in place, so how the hazard can be prevented. So as I said before, there might be more than one hazard in the images. So on the next slide there are 4 images, there's A, B, C and D. And if you look below, there's a table. And so in the image column, you just need to identify the image that you're looking at. So you just need to write whether it's A, B, C, or D. Once you've looked at the image and you've identified and you've seen all those little hazards, that's where you write them down in the identified hazard column. Now it doesn't have to be full sentences, they can just be a little bullet point list. And then in the risk column, that's when you're going to be a bit specific and you're going to state what harm could be caused by those hazards that you've identified. And then the final column, which is suggested control, here you're going to write what steps could be put in place to make sure that that hazard doesn't actually harm anybody. Again, this is something that we have covered whilst being in school. So these are your images. Top left is A, and it shows you some rather dodgy looking scaffolding. We've got image B, which is on the top right, and here it is a work area. Image C is the bottom left. You may have seen this before because it has been used in a lesson, and you can see some workers again on a scaffolding area. And image D, which is in the bottom right hand corner, again this is an image that has been taken from one of our lessons, so you might recognize it, and you can see it's some again workers that are working with rather heavy materials, and they're trying to install a beam through the wall into the room, which is a little bit awkward, but they seem like they're doing a good job. Partly, not really. Task 3. This will take you roughly 20 minutes. It might take you a little bit longer, it might take you a little bit less, but that's absolutely fine. So this task is all about planning. We have completed planning tasks within school, and this task is all about using Gantt charts. So let's read through. You have been hired to help renovate a family home. One of the tasks is to build 2 new door frames. The doors and materials have already been purchased. Your task is to create a Gantt chart that shows the time you think it will take for this job to be completed. Use the waggle below to help you create your own. If you're not sure how to start, first write a list of steps that will need to be completed in order to make the door frames. Then think about the order that those steps should go in. And then think about how much time they would actually take. And once you've considered those things, then you can create your Gantt chart. So if you look at the waggle below, you might remember this, and you might think, oh yes, no, we've seen this before, because you would have completed one of these for your bird box project, which was many moons ago in term 1 and term 2. So as you can see on the left hand side of this waggle, there is a task list. So this Gantt chart shows you how to make a cup of tea and how much time it will take. So the task is literally all the individual steps. So I won't read through all of them, but I will read through a couple. You've got turn kettle on. That's the number one thing. Without that, we can't have our cup of tea. So I've said that it's going to take roughly 1 minute. And you can see I've stated that because where it says timeline and the bracket says minutes, so it tells me the numbers represent a minute. I can see that it's going to take me 1 minute to turn on that kettle because I've highlighted that box pink. The next task is to wait for the water to boil. Now this is going to take me 4 minutes to complete, and I know that because on the timeline I have highlighted 4 boxes that go up to 4 minutes. So that tells me it's going to take 4 minutes to complete that task. Underneath the next task, it says get the mug out of the cupboard. Now this is where the Gantt charts can get a little bit confusing. This task is going to take me roughly 1 minute. However, I have highlighted the box which is underneath the 2 minutes timeline box. Each block represents 1 minute. Now I'm saying that it will take me 1 minute to get the mug out of the cupboard, but the timeline also shows me the length of time the entire task would take. So although it will only take me 1 minute to actually turn on the kettle, at this point I've been making my cup of tea for 2 minutes. Let's look at another example. Underneath I say to get a teaspoon. Now that will also take me 1 minute because I've only highlighted one box, but at this point in the process I would have been making my cup of tea for 3 minutes. Now it won't take me the entire minute just to get a teaspoon, so in that minute I am also putting 1 teaspoon of sugar in my mug, and it will still be about 3 minutes of this process because again it's under the 3 column. Okay, now I hope that does make sense. If you're not entirely sure still, there's always resources on YouTube that will help to explain Gantt charts in a little bit more detail. But do try to reflect back on your lesson on Gantt charts. Now, if you were with Miss Anderson, she would have created a little printout for you to highlight with your times. If you were with Mr. Thompson, you would have worked in a computer room and created your own Excel Gantt chart. Task 4. This will take you roughly 30 minutes. Now, this task is still based on planning, because when you are working, whether you're in school or out of school, you do need to think about what materials and tools you would need to create a project or complete a job. But you'd also need to think about the steps you're going to work in to make sure that you're organized and that you make good progress in order to finish that project on time. So, below is a little diagram of a door, and it has the dimensions of the door frame. So this relates to your Gantt chart. You're going to use your Gantt chart to help you create a step-by-step plan of how you would build that door frame. So your plan must include the tools and equipment and the PPE that you would need in order to complete your work safely. And the plan should be written as a table like the one below, because it just makes it easier to see. So you don't need to include any timings here. All you need to do is you need to write out each individual step, all right? So little instructions as to what you'll do. So think about the first thing you would actually need to do before you start making the door frame. Again, you would have probably written all of this in your Gantt chart, so that's there to help you. You then need to add the tools and the materials that are required. So this won't be included in your Gantt chart, not necessarily. So again, think back to your practical lessons, and when you're making your door, all right, what tools and equipment did you use and why? And then the final one is the PPE that is required. So what PPE would you need to wear in order to be safe during this particular step? Task 5. This will take you roughly 30 minutes. So it's been a while since we've been in the workshop, and it's been a while since we've done practical work. So I thought it would be a really good opportunity to again reflect back at all those times we were in the workshop making your bird box, the little mobile phone holder thing we first started off with, and of course your door and all that chiseling. And what I've created is a little crossword for you to complete. So on the left hand side of this slide, you can see that there are some across and down questions. All of these relate to your practical lessons, every single one of them. And they're either asking you to identify a tool or maybe a process. And then on the following slide, this is your crossword that you're going to complete by adding those answers into this crossword. So you've just got to make sure that the numbers relate to the numbered question. Okay, so number 1, for example, this is going down, so that means that the question number 1 would be under the down column. And then here we have number 5. This one is going across, so the number 5 question would be in the across column on the previous slide. Now there are some images here to help you as well, just to help remind you as to what we used. Not all of them are entirely helpful, I'm not going to lie. I may have snuck in 1 or 2 just for fun, but hopefully they'll also trigger some memories for you to help you complete the crossword and answer those questions.